Okay, so in this video we'll be making the sword. To do that we just start with the box. So we click on box right here so it's selected, and then we'll click and drag it out here and pull it up here, and we'll have a box. So we can move the screen around now and we can look at it from any direction. And to make adjustments to it we'll need the Edit Poly, and that's under the Modifier tab. And right here is Modify. So right here is Create, so it creates what we want, any of these. But Modify will be able to change what we're looking at. So Modify, and then the modifier list right here. We expand this down, and we look for Edit Poly. We'll be using this one mostly in class, so this is one of the more common ones we'll be seeing. So we click Edit Poly, and it applies it to the box now. So now we can edit the box. So to do that, we're going to first start with the Polygon mode right here. So within Edit Poly, we have several options to manipulate the box. So this Polygon mode will allow me to grab any of these faces. And to make this a little easier to see, I'm going to change the color from red to something else. So up here is color if you ever wanted to change colors. I'm going to pick something like a light blue. Alright, so now the sword color is light blue. Makes it a little easier to see which highlighted box we're on. So it's highlighted here in red. If you go to vertex mode, you'll see that they turn red on the vertices right here. But I'm going to go back to Polygon mode. So I'm going to grab the top of here, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so I can see the box a little smaller. And I'm already on the move command right here. So move, we have also rotate and scale, but I'm going to use move right now. And I'm going to move this upwards so I have a bit of a sword blade, a vertical height now. So I have move right here, which moved this little polygon upwards. So once I have that done, I can go over to edit and put some slice marks in here. Edit right here. It's different than the edit that's up here. We're going to use edit right here. And this one only appears when you're active on the box. So if I deactivate Polygon mode and I click off the box, it's no longer here in the corner. So if we want to see the edit option, we have to click on the box we want, and then you'll see edit. But this only appears also if you have an edit poly on here. So more or less, once you have edit poly, let's go over here to edit and click on Swift Loop, and now we can start cutting slices into the box. So we're going to gauge the handle height, let's say right here, and click it once, and using the left click, and so it puts a slice right here in red. So that's where we first made our cut. We're going to make another slice right here and click that, and so that turns in red also because that was just selected. And once we're done, it's going to keep asking us where do we want to make more slices. If we don't want to make any more, we just use the right click and it'll cancel, and now we just have our two slices. If you can't see the lines on the box, that button is F4 on the keyboard. F4 turns off and on the lines. So if I click off of it and that's no longer selected, you can see that F4 turns the lines off and on so we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to go back over here to Polygon mode and grab this side polygon, and I might as well grab the other polygon as well on this side. And to add multiple, you hold the control key, and now you have two selected. If you don't use control and you grab it once and grab the other, it'll deselect your other side. So all I'm doing is holding control to add both sides at once. And then I go over here to Extrude, which is all under the Edit Poly. Everything we're doing is right here. So we click on Extrude, and now I can click and hold with the left mouse button, and I can pull it outwards. So that makes sense. I'm pulling it out using the Extrude command. If I wanted to come out further, I can go over here to the Move command. I can grab the one I want, let's say this one, and pull it out a little further. If I wanted to make it even, I can grab this side also and pull it out a little further using these arrows right here. So now we have somewhat of a sword blade. Next up, let's make the edge of the blade a little more narrow. So we'll go back over here to Edit Swift Loop, and we're going to put a slice right here. This will differentiate between the blade and the handle, and I'll put a slice right here. So now we have two slices, and I can right click and cancel. But before I do that, let's put a slice right down the center as well. So it splits the blade down the center, and turn this to the side and put one more down the side. So now I have one on this side, one on this side, one right here, and one here. So right click to cancel the swift loop. So we just have a couple more slices now. And now we can go over to the edge mode and click on this one edge right here. So not a lot of them, just the one right here. And we can grab the red arrow, or it might be a different color depending on which direction you're working with. But we want to pull this closer to that line right there. So you can see it narrowed that in. So we'll grab the other one and pull that one in as well. So we're starting to narrow it because we're grabbing the edge basically and pulling it towards the middle to narrow it down. So comparing, it's we're just pushing it inwards, and that's creating a sharp edge of the blade. And if we want to make this easier so we don't have to do this twice, we can go over here to the modifier list again and click modify and put on, scroll all the way down to the bottom where you see symmetry. Symmetry means it mirrors both sides of what you're working on. So we'll click on symmetry, and here we get to play with what type of symmetry we want. We have, zoom out a little, we have an X, a Y, and a Z. So we have to pick which axis we want. The Y-axis will create a sword that looks like this. The Z-axis will do this. So depending on which axis we pick, we're going to get different effects. So right now this orange line is mirroring the sword across this direction. But we want to mirror it across this direction. So I'm going to switch it to Y, and it mirrors it this way. It usually works, but sometimes it doesn't always center it. So if you need to readjust it, if it doesn't look correct, then over here with the plus sign, you can click on mirror, and once you're on the mirror point, you can move where you want it to mirror. So if I drag and slide it, I can control where it's mirroring. This is the mirror, and so here it's dividing the two objects in half. If I slide it closer and closer, it'll start merging the two until there's just one object. So we can see now that it's mirroring both halves. So now I can let go of the mirror and go back to Edit Poly. So we've just moved the mirror to match. But if yours already looks like this, then you don't have to worry about using the mirror point. That's just to readjust things. So we have this here, and what's happening now is that it mirrored it but the wrong direction. So on symmetry, you can flip the mirror point. So now I've flipped it for us. Without flip, it's taking the original side and duplicating it. We want to flip it so the side we modified into an edge looks like the other side. And then go back to Edit Poly. So now whatever I do to the one side will affect the other side. But it still has a little bit of a seam here, so I'm going to go back to adjusting the mirror center and slide it until it gets rid of that, and so it's just one line now. And then back to Edit Poly. So now it's nice and clean. So as long as you get the sword to looking like this point, we're off to a good start. And then we go down to, let's say, the vertex mode. And I can grab this one in the middle right here. So you can see it's just, I clicked on just that one right there. And using this blue arrow, I can pull this one vertex straight down. And I now have a point on the sword. And so that's the first step. And next step, we're going to start adjusting these handle guards. Alright, so the first thing we'll do is go back to Edit swift loop, and once that pops out, we can slice it once right here. And so we've cut this in half, so now we can modify this. So right click will cancel the swift loop, and now we can go over to, let's go to edges. Oops. Go over to Edit Poly, edges, and grab just this one, and go all the way around, one by one. So hold the Control key, 1, 2, keep going around, 3, 4, 5. And so we have this, and we can rotate this a little. So over here on the rotate command, we can rotate this a little more. And so we have a little bit of an angle now. And then go over here to Polygon Mode, just the flat surface. And we'll click on each flat surface. If you don't hold Control, it won't actually keep grabbing them. So click it once, and then hold Control and grab the next one. So now we have 2 selected. And now we can rotate this using the yellow axis. If we use, well, the yellow is the one that's currently selected. So if you grab the blue one, it's going to twist this way. But we want to twist it the other way. So we're going to twist it down using this axis. And so it bends the handle down, kind of like flat. And then we'll go to the move command right here, and we're going to move it downwards to about here. So now we have the handle moved. So all we did was we took the one line and rotated it, kind of like an angle. We took the second one, just the outside edge, and rotated that flat and moved it down. So now we have a hand guard. And next up, we want to make the edge a little sharper. So we're going to go to vertex mode right here and select, drag across with the mouse. So click once and drag, and you can select things. Instead of going one by one, we can just click and drag until it grabs all 3. And if we zoom in, you can see that it has 3 selected, and we want to merge these 3 together. So we're going to go down here to the Weld command and click Weld, and nothing happens because the Weld setting isn't high enough. So right next to the word Weld, we see the settings dialog. So instead of clicking Weld, we're going to click the settings so we can adjust how the weld's going to work. So we click on settings, and now we have how much of a weld. This number, the threshold, will determine how close these points need to be. So we're going to click it and slide it just close enough until they pop together. See what's happening? As the number gets high enough, around 2.3, it's popping it together. So your numbers could be different depending on how big you made the sword, but just keep scaling it until they pop into 1. And press OK, which is the check mark to make sure it confirms what you want. So we've just merged those together. But we also want to merge this one up here because we don't need 2 of them up here. So we'll click on both those by just basically dragging across it. And now go down to the Weld command. And it still doesn't work because it's still too far apart. So we'll go to the settings again and keep sliding it until they click together. And they click together like that. So press check, and that merged them into one single point. Now scroll down to the bottom and grab these 3 because these 3 aren't a nice sharp point either. So we'll take these 3 and we'll click Weld, and this time they worked because the Weld command was close enough. Otherwise you have to go to settings and readjust that. So it made it to one sharp clean line because it merged the 3 vertices into one and took all the 3 edges that were there and merged them into one. So before it had 3 edges and 3 vertices, and they got merged into one. So let's zoom out, and we have a nice sharp blade, and I did it to the other side because the symmetry right here, the symmetry will make it do the same to both sides. If I turn off symmetry by clicking this little this light bulb, you'll see what the original sword looked like. So the original one was like this. And so what symmetry is doing is just matching the one side to the other. So if I click symmetry, the light bulb, and you'll see that it matches both sides. Alright, the last thing we need to do is adjust the handle. So if I grab on the edge command, I can start moving the edge inwards. As long as you have the 4 corners, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then all the lines in between. I have one right here, it's in between these 2 edges. I have one right here, it's in between these 2 edges. And it keeps going around, one here between these 2, and one here between these 2. I can pull the edges in to make more of an octagon shape. So I can grab the one edge and slide that in a little bit, rotate around, and slide it in a little more this way. And you can see what happened is that it started rounding it. I'm going to slide it back out just a little more, and a little more this way, so it creates more of a rounded amount. And do the same for the other side. So I'm going to click here, and instead of doing one by one, the red and the green, I can grab in between, and I can do both at the same time. So it highlights them instead of just one or the other, it does both. So click here, and I can slide this in any direction I want. So we don't want the handle to look like this or like this. We're going to center it so it looks a little more rounded like that. And so now you can see we have a rounded handle, and the hand guard, and the blade. And the last thing to do, handles usually have a larger counterweight here so that the blade isn't too heavy on the front. So we're going to make a bump out here. So we're going to move this over to Edit, Swift Loop. And Swift Loop basically means cut a slice in our sword. And we're going to slice it right about here. And that should leave a short handle. We could adjust the proportions a little more if we wanted to. Right click will cancel the Swift Loop. We don't need that. We just have the one now. So now we can go to Polygon Mode, and we're going to select all the polygons. So I can click one, and it highlights the other side because it's on Symmetry mode. So if I scroll over here and click off, every time I click one, it'll highlight the other side for me. So I want to hold the Control key, and that will allow me to add both. If I don't use Control, I'm only going to keep grabbing one at a time. So hold Control, and it adds more to my selection. Scroll over here, hold Control, add another, and the last one. So now all of these have been selected. So now I'm going to go to Extrude, and if I click on Extrude, I can click once with the right key, or the left key, and pull it out, but you can see it's not distorting the way I want it to go. So I'm going to use Control Z to put that back the way it was, and go back over here to Settings. In the Settings command, I can change how the group normals work. I can click the down arrow, and I can pick between 3 options: group normals, local normals, and by polygon. I'm going to use local normals for this, and as I click it, it'll start expanding out this direction. So now I'm going to bring this in a little bit more so it's not too far out. And it looks like it's also putting a divide right here, which I don't really want. So I'm going to cancel this and turn off Symmetry so I can see the other piece of my sword. So I'm going to hold Control and grab that extra piece on this side and spin around and hold Control and grab this one. So now that I have both of these selected and put this back on Symmetry, now all of it and a little more that we can't see is also selected. Go back to the Settings, and now it's extruding and filling that in for us because we selected it before the Symmetry. So now I can change the size and slide it in just a little more. So it looks like it's popping out just a little. And the last thing, we're going to press OK, so we like the way this looks. And then use the Scale, which is right here, right next to Move, Rotate, and Scale. And we're going to use just the one arrow, which in this case is blue, and pull it down just a little bit so it looks a little more rounded. Now we can click off of there, and we now have a rounded handle. Alright, with the rounded handle, we're now pretty much done. Just for a little extra, the handle looks a little short, So I'm going to go with the Polygon Mode, actually Vertice Mode right here. And I'm going to select using the dragging tool. Just click it once and drag across all the top ones, and that selects all the vertices on the top. If I go to move right here with the move command, I can grab this arrow and pull this up a little higher. You can see I'm pulling the entire handle and stretching it. I'm going to pull it up a little higher. So before it was here, and I moved it up to here now. So it makes the handle look a little longer, a little more proportional. I could also do that with the blade if I wanted to. I can pull the blade longer. I can move any of the pieces around if I wanted to. So this looks a little more accurate. If I want to make the whole sword longer, I could grab all of this, which is the entire handguard, and I can pull this a little longer, and that makes the sword a little longer because I'm pulling all these up higher. And we now have a sword. We can always add more modifications if we want. If we wanted to add more cuts in here and slices and make it pointy. But for the most part, this is pretty much a sword. If I wanted to make this pommel, this back part look a little bigger, I could use the drag rectangle. I can drag across, and so it just selects the top row. And I can pull just that a little higher, and that makes this part look a little bigger if I wanted to. If I wanted to adjust it some more, I could also click once here, hold the control, and grab the other one right here, and spin to the other side to keep it even. I'll grab, using the control key, this one and this one, so I have these four vertices, 2 right there and 2 right there, and I can pull these down a little to kind of add like a point here just to give an artistic look to it. And if I wanted to make this a little more pointy right here, let's say I grab this one right here and this one right here, and I could move it in, or to keep it even, I can hold the control key and grab the other side. So now I have 2 on this side and 2 on this side, and using the scale, which is another way of doing this, another technique, I can scale these 2 in, and it keeps it perfectly centered coming inwards. So now I can pull this in or put it out if I wanted to, and design my own sword a little more custom. And click off of there. And so now I have a finished sword. And when I'm all done, click off of the vertex tool, so it deactivates that, and click off of the sword, and it's completely finished now.